Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Happy holidays. Thank you
Yes.
so much for gracing us with your time and attention. My name is Jamal Jones. I help entrepreneurs struggling with self doubt and fear take inspired action with more clarity,
Mhm.
confidence, and courage. And those of you who know me or maybe familiar with my story, a major part of my story as a adult and professional is burnout.
Mm.
I myself have experienced burnout as a W 2 employee. I've experienced burnout as an entrepreneur, as a therapist in private practice. And I am so excited to have a special guest on our show today entitled Three Things High Achieving Professionals Can Do to Overcome Burnout in 2025. Because there are so many of us out there who are professional and heart centered and showing up for yourself, showing up for your family, showing up for the community.
Mhm.
And burnout can sometimes just be the norm. So I want to introduce a beloved colleague, Miss Nicole Barksdale, LCSW. Nicole is in private practice, and she actually specializes in trauma and burnout prevention for high achieving women. Welcome to the show, Nicole, and can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate you having me today. Like you said, I'm an LCSW. I've been in the field of mental health for just about 18 years in some capacity or another. Just like you, I've done the W 2 job. I've had some really great jobs, had some bad jobs, but some that most people might see as success. I've had that opportunity to experience that. And so in that journey, I've discovered that, I myself was dealing with burnout as I pursued success. And so now I've been in private practice for about a year. And so I've been helping women really figure out what that looks like because oftentimes we don't even recognize it. We know what it feels like, but we don't know what it is. And so that's what I do in my private practice. And I offer individual therapy as well as retreat style intensives for my clients. And it's just been a wonderful journey.
You bring up a great point, Nicole. Can you talk to us a little bit about how to recognize burnout?
Mm,
Because there are people who are watching us right now who, as far as they know, they're good.
yeah.
They're energized. Uh, they're showing up. They're persevering. They're
Mhm.
enduring. They're
Yeah.
being faithful. They're following through.
Yes.
So, what are some signs and symptoms that this high achieving woman might be burnt out that she might not be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is kind of hard to notice because oftentimes we see success and we think that we're doing well, but a lot of times it's when you are alone and you're noticing that you can't seem to turn things off. Right? You're thinking about work. You're thinking about what you're supposed to be doing. You're always feeling compelled to be busy and doing things to the point where you start to kind of mentally disconnect. You kind of resent the things that you used to like. You don't know why. You're kind of creating some rationales as to maybe why you're feeling like that. Anything to help you keep going and continue to work that way usually is what's happening. So oftentimes, we start to disconnect. We get a little irritated by things that maybe we hadn't in the past. We feel guilty when we sit down to rest. We don't even recognize what rest is anymore. And when it comes to work, we might start questioning, do I want this job? Is this the job for me? And so internally, you just start kind of having these battles, and you just don't feel fulfilled anymore, and you start to feel the stress and the pressure all of the time. You're not able to turn it off. Is usually what-
Interesting, Nicole, you bring up that these symptoms of like feeling regretful,
Mhm,
feeling guilty,
mhm.
unable to unplug from your mind, always having things on your mind, these are all internal
Yeah,
stressors that you can't see on the outside.
right.
So for that woman who is experiencing that guilt, that regret, right now it's the holidays, so it might be somebody who actually enjoys her career
Mhm.
and enjoys caring for family and friends. And throughout the year, that person might actually enjoy hosting social gatherings or
Absolutely.
family gatherings. But this year in 2024, she might feel different. Like she may have hosted Thanksgiving, or maybe she decided not to host Thanksgiving because she was sick and tired of suddenly hosting something that she was once passionate about. We have Christmas coming up, we have New Year's coming up.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
all those things, my point here, are kind of internal.
Mhm.
Is there anything else you want to add to kind of add some color to helping this person become more self-aware that they may actually be experiencing burnout in addition to those internal stressors?
Absolutely. I mean, people around us, people that know us, that love us, might, start questioning, you okay? You feeling all right? And you're acting a little different. You good? And so checking in with us like that, which oftentimes we might take offense to that. What do you mean I'm okay? Don't you see I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing? The dinner is done, and the hosting is done. But your mood is a bit different. You're a bit shorter with people. Your tolerance might not be where it used to be. And so those are some of the things, especially when you're a mom maybe and you have children. You may notice that you're pouring into other areas, and when it comes to the kids, you're kind of snapping on them a little bit. You don't mean to, but they might say, "What's wrong with you, Mom? What's going on with you?" Those are signs usually that the people around us are starting to feel that are overwhelmed. It's spilling out, right?
Nicole, we all have internal stress. We all can experience some level of turmoil on the inside. What you're describing here is it begins to actually spill over from inside to now it's spilling over into personal relationships, it's spilling over into parenting and
Yes.
people in our support system. This could be our supervisor, it could be a colleague, it could be our children
Mhm.
who are now, they might feel something different. So they might enjoy that meal with us and look forward to it, but maybe we were a little bit more agitated or
Absolutely.
not
Or
as
distracted,
patient.
feeling very distracted, being on our phones, not because we're, on social media necessarily, but we're looking at emails or we're checking to make sure we did this or feeling as if we forgot something. So we're not present really with the people around us. And that starts to show up in our relationships. And that's when it starts to affect relationships.
So as we are building out this definition of burnout, we're kind of highlighting there's some internal turmoil
Hmm.
that becomes so it gets to a point to where it begins to spill over into our outside world,
Hmm.
and people begin to notice, what about energy and the type of energy, like this person is like working full time and a parenting is a full-time job, and
Hmm.
they're involved in the community, they're on boosters clubs, and they're doing all the things. Can you share a little bit of insight into how burnout affects their energy?
Absolutely. I mean, when we strive to show up in all these areas, because that's what we've been doing most of our lives, before we even hit the point of burnout, we very much identify that we are able to perform in this way. And so we always feel like we might have this energy. I can do all of these things. But in certain areas, you're going to see the lack. We can only perform so much. And so we may, have energy in one space and not another. But over time, because we have so much going on, we're kind of dragging a little bit. We're forgetting things. We're not as present. We might not feel as sharp as we did before, even though we know we're capable of that. And there's nothing to indicate that that should be lacking now, but it's just a lot. And we're feeling very much stretched and pulled in so many directions. That we're not able to show up in the way that we usually do. So in terms of energy, we honestly kind of just want to lay down. You just want to kind of lay in the bed, but the guilt of I'm supposed to be doing all these things keeps us going and keeps pushing us.
Nicole, for me, when I was experiencing burnout as a W-2 employee, I was doing a lot of things you're talking about.
Mhm.
I didn't have the self-awareness at the time to really say, Jamal, you know what? You're burnt out, and Jamal, you need to actually use your PTO,
Mhm.
vacation time. I actually kept pushing myself,
Mhm.
and I eventually got let go by my job. So
Mhm.
that's why I'm so passionate about this, because at the time I was a breadwinner,
Yeah.
38 years old with a 3-year-old daughter. And next thing I knew, because I didn't have the self awareness to take some practical steps to prevent myself from losing a 6-figure income just like that.
Mhm.
Looking back, for me, hindsight's 2020, and there's things I would do differently. But for that person who was like me,
Mhm.
that woman out there who may be watching this right now, she might be asking herself, is she burnt out?
Hmm.
I wouldn't wish what happened to me on anybody else.
Right.
And so as we're looking at the coming to the end of this year and trying to position these women to be successful in 2025, can you give us one or two tips of things that they can do to proactively overcome or avoid burnout in 2025?
Absolutely. One of the things I always encourage people to do is just really prioritize rest as a non-negotiable. And what that really looks like is having these times in which we very intentionally rest. If the dishes need to be done, they get to sit there, right? If we need to run a few errands, they may not get done. And so, really carving that out, just like we would schedule a play date or we would schedule a coffee date with a colleague, really taking the time to schedule ourselves in our own lives is really important. Even if that's just a few hours a week or, you know, a certain day, maybe half a day on a weekend, if you can, something like that, to just really, make sure that you can be consistent with that. So maybe every week or every Tuesday is kind of your day to, take that time for yourself is really important.
Now, Nicole, if someone's listening and they're like, oh my God, she said rest, she must be crazy.
Yes.
This Nicole Barksdale has no idea the level of responsibility I have. Nicole has no idea what I'm dealing with as a
Yes.
mother, as a professional.
Yes.
Rest for me is not an option. Can you talk us through, Nicole?
Yes.
I guess how would you respond to that person who is really resistant to the idea of resting? Because for this high achieving person, to rest means to not do anything.
Absolutely.
It
And I
means to
love that.
stop.
I appreciate you bringing that up because that's so important to really address and to redefine what we think that means. And so, for many of us that are pushing and pushing and pushing to, sort of accomplish all these things and do these things, rest could look like doing something different that is for ourselves. And so it may not look like lying down in the bed. It may look like hitting the gym or being present with your child, playing a game on the floor. And just making sure you're listening to every word they're saying and being very present with them. Or it may look like, taking a quiet drive in the car, or if you have a certain song you like, doing that. And so just being intentional with, and really, because once we kind of get really mindful and in our body with what we're doing in that moment, it helps to bring our brain back from all that anticipatory anxiety that we get when we think we have all these, or when we know we have all these things to do. So really just kind of taking a break from that rat race a little bit doesn't mean that we have to sit still. Rest can be different for every person, right? And so go ahead. What were we going to say?
As you're talking, it almost sounds like resting is to unplug
Absolutely.
from the regular responsibilities,
Absolutely.
to unplug from the things, the people, and activities that are draining you,
Yes.
and to engage in the relationships and activities that give you life.
Absolutely. And sometimes we don't know what is draining us either. Right. And so we hear that word. It's like, no, but I'm doing a good job. I'm doing really well. And so really taking a little inventory of life and saying, okay, this is job. This is what I'm supposed to do at work. These are my responsibilities at home. This is what kind of life looks like in terms of my responsibilities in my life. So rest is going to look different than that list of things that we know we have to be responsible for.
As you were talking, Nicole, I was thinking about, oftentimes when you're heart centered and you really care for your family and friends,
Mhm.
it's not unusual for family and friends to begin to depend on you emotionally.
Right.
And they begin to text you more frequently. And you're a sister, you're a daughter, you're a friend.
Mhm.
But the way these people begin to access you, you can begin to feel like you're their therapist, you're their doctor, you're their psychiatrist, you're their. And so when it comes to unplugging, do you know of any stories where for some people who were burnt out, they actually had to limit or set some boundaries with like who they were receiving text from or who they would speak to on the phone or spend time with?
I can use my own example. When I was burned out and I worked for the state of California and I left that job. And, I had to be very intentional with letting people know that I have some stuff going on, and if I don't get back to him, it doesn't mean anything personal. I had to take that initiative and use that verbiage and communicate that for myself. And that was me learning boundaries around, I need this break because my innate ability to want to help and hear you and help you solve the problem, it just kicks in. And I find myself just kind of wrapped up in, the people that I care about, whatever they have going on. I want to be there to support them and care for them. So I recognized I had to be intentional with stepping back, which was a challenge because it's not something that I usually do. And that's when that intentionality really has to kick in.
I can only imagine it must have been so freeing. Like once you did it, like to be free of that pressure to respond, the pressure to have the answer, the pressure to be there. That one boundary kind of, did you feel like you got lighter in your shoulders?
Without question. Before that, I had never even put my phone on do not disturb before.
Wow.
Right. And so just to give you an idea. And so it did. I mean, you have to recognize and acknowledge the guilt that you might feel that sort of instantly kicks in, but then you can pay attention to the relief you feel in your body.
So some of the things we're unpacking in this definition of burnout is these are high achieving women.
Yeah.
They're passionate about their life. They're passionate about where they live, where they work, where they play. Over a period of time, because they've been pushing themselves so hard, the things they were passionate about, they actually begin to have some resentment. They begin to have some guilt. Their batteries are getting drained a lot faster than what would be normal for them. And so your first tip for this person, and it also begins to spill over. It begins internally, but spills over into their personal relationships, their productivity in every part of their life.
Yes.
And so your first tip for them is to prioritize rest.
Absolutely.
Now that we have that said, what would be a second tip you would offer these high achieving women as they prepare for 2025?
The second thing I would encourage people to do is just redefine success to include our well-being. Does that make sense? And so, oftentimes we know what success looks like. And usually when we take time to define that for ourselves, we're not necessarily included in that definition.
Well, hold on. So Nicole, so I know there's somebody out there, especially if it's a person with some may have a faith-based background, some might not, but there's this sense when you're a leader of being selfless. And it's not about me, and I'm here to sacrificially love and care for others.
Yeah.
So for that woman out there who has been socialized and conditioned and trained to really put others first.
Yes.
What you're saying here might come off as kind of revolutionary to that mindset of, are you telling me to go against how I've been trained? Are you telling me to go against my faith? Are you telling me to go against, I love people. I love my family. I love my children. I love my clients. And you're telling me to prioritize my wellness? Can you kind of unpack that for us a little bit, Nicole?
And I've had people say that, and I've said that. And so, when we get clear about how we want to show up for the people we love, get real clear about how do I want to show up? If I want to be caring, I want to be present. And then you take a look and you compare that to, how am I feeling now? Am I able to show up that way? Because that's important to me. Does it align, if that makes sense, right?
Yes.
And so oftentimes looking at that and saying, I want to do this. This is absolutely important to me. And so I can say, are you able to do that right now? What does that look like? I'm not, because I have these different feelings. So because it's important to show up in that way, we got to take a pause so we can get you back to where you need to be so you can show up in that way. Because you're recognizing right now you're not able to do that.
So our audience might want to be considering for 2025, what are their priorities for their personal wellness? Absolutely. What are their priorities for their personal relationships? What are their priorities for their career? Because they are important. And it reminds me of a verse, actually the greatest commandment, where it says to love God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength, and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And I kind of get a sense that's where you're coming from, is to say, hey, care for yourself, nurture yourself, prioritize your needs, because the better you take care of yourself, that's actually going to help you be more effective in how you care for others. Am I getting that right, Nicole?
100%. That's exactly right. And, going back to, I know you mentioned that I also, do a lot of work around trauma because of the relationship between trauma and burnout. And when you were speaking earlier about, I want to be able to pour into other people, that's very important to me. And so for some people, maybe not everybody, but sometimes very triggered when we can't do that. And that, really causes us to feel a bit overwhelmed with emotions, and it plays into that burnout, if you will. And so when we do that treatment, we're going after some of those core beliefs, maybe some of those parts of ourselves, maybe it's a people pleaser part or a perfectionist part of ourselves that help us in many ways, but it can also hinder us in others in terms of taking care of ourselves. And so that's what we address when we work together.
And Nicole, it's really common for high achievers because they're so dependable and responsible.
Mm-hmm.
Some people actually pride themselves on the mantra, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. And they can really be burnt out and really be loyal to this do it yourself mindset
Mm-hmm.
because they are capable, they are competent, and they've been holding it down for so long. How challenging is it for this high achieving woman to ask others for help or to seek out support that they might need? And could there possibly be a third thing that they can do in 2025 to like get out of this burnout, get off this burnout treadmill that they're on?
Oftentimes, sometimes taking the word burnout off the table has been helpful because we may not define it that way. We may just feel like, I don't like the way I've been feeling lately. I haven't felt rested. I haven't felt no peace. I don't feel fulfilled in what I'm doing. I feel like I'm just running in a circle and I just want to feel some peace and some relaxation. And I can't seem to grasp. I don't know how to get there. And so sometimes it's just as simple as let's have a talk. There's something going on in your life right now that it's not that you're necessarily unhappy, but you have a desire for something better and you want to explore that. And so sometimes taking that off allows some of that protective part of us that wants to keep us safe from coming up, because oftentimes we get that protective part showing up and people feel uncomfortable saying that maybe that's not okay, that I act that way or that I behave this way. And so, having conversations around how do I desire to feel in my day-to-day life? And is that happening for me?
I love how you kind of talked about the struggle, the challenges that they're facing right now. Because for some people, the word burnout just doesn't resonate.
Mm-mm.
But that loss of peace
Mm-hmm.
and the lack of fulfillment and the frustration and the being easily agitated and feeling tired and not enjoying certain aspects of their life like they once did. It's really tough during the holidays because for some people, they really have an affinity toward the holiday season, though for others, it can be a very painful and difficult time. So, Nicole, we're talked about this sense of like guilt and internal resentments and frustration, and how this turmoil on the inside begins to spill over into personal relationships and negatively impact productivity in every aspect of life. You recommend that people prioritize their rest.
Mm-hmm.
You also recommend that people prioritize their own mental wellness so that they can be more effective in how they add value and serve others. There might be somebody who they're watching this and they kind of resonate with you and connect with you. Do you have any openings in your private practice? From what I understand, you work with an exclusive limited number of clients throughout the year. Do you have any current availability? And if so, what would it look like for someone to reach out to you for help?
Absolutely. I do have some things coming up, especially in 2025, to be able to reach more clients, retreat style things, as well as some one-on-ones. And so if anybody was, interested and wanted to talk more, I have an email address at info@nicolebarksdale.com. It's a really great way to reach out to me, to just have a dialogue. Because sometimes, you might feel like do I need therapy? What kind of support do I need? And you're uncertain. And so I provide a 30-minute consultation, which gives me an opportunity to just sit down with somebody and say, what is happening for you and how can I support you? And it's, go ahead.
Thank you for sharing that. Can you kind of give some insight into this 30 minutes?
Yeah.
I know for myself, when people contact my practice, one of the most satisfying things for me is if for some reason that person or that couple isn't the best fit for my practice, I love to refer to people like you and others who I know is going to take care of these folks.
Yeah.
Can you walk this person who is like thinking about scheduling with you? What happens if they are a good fit for you? And also what happens if, based upon their needs, they're not the best fit? What do you do then?
And I do the same thing. I like to have, it's about the client when I meet with them, if I'm being honest. And so I go over what I offer and how I can support them. I give them an opportunity to really just share what even brought them here. And we have some dialogue around what they'd like to see happen. And then we can narrow that down to see if we could be a good fit in working together. And if not, I always like to give them, a few referrals. I actually encourage them to continue to look around and talk to other people, because therapy can be very intimate in terms of you're being vulnerable, you're sharing things, and you want to feel good about the person that you're choosing to do that with. So, no matter who I meet with, I always encourage them to, take a look at, these folks, and, there might be some other people who might be a better fit or you might feel a bit more comfortable with.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, to our listeners, burnout and compassion fatigue, it's real. Hopefully for those of you who are listening who may not had a realization that you were experiencing some of these struggles that people who are burnt out tend to have, we hope that you can be a little more self-aware. And you as a leader, as a professional, as a family member, is so important to our society, to our community. And so we really hope that in 2025 that you get the help that you need. Nicole Barksdale, she has dedicated her practice to serving high achieving women who struggle with burnout. So if that's you or someone you know, please contact her at info@NicoleBarksdale.com. Nicole, do you have any closing thoughts?
I just want to say for people, if you are feeling this way and you're still a bit on the fence on how to get help, I would just encourage you to build a support system. Get some people around you that you can have dialogue with, whether maybe your local church or a women's group or your gym or whatever you can, to just be able to express how you're feeling to someone. Don't feel like you have to hold it in. Find your people if you can, and you'll get through it.
Well, thank you, Nicole, and thank you all for gracing us with your time and attention. I'm Jamal Jones. I help entrepreneurs who struggle with self-doubt and fear take inspired action with more clarity, confidence, and courage. And burnout is a big part of my life story. I know it's a part of many others, including Nicole's. So what an honor and a privilege it was to be able to share, to have this here with you today, Nicole. Again, thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Be encouraged.